They told us the finish line was 65. Nobody told us they could move it. When a lot of Gen X men were growing up, retirement seemed simple. Work hard, stay responsible, save money, do the right things, and eventually you'd cross the finish line. The hard part would be over. At least, that was the deal. I'm Dave, and today we're getting into the psychology behind the retirement that never seems to arrive for a lot of Gen X men. Because this isn't really about money. It's about uncertainty. For a lot of our parents, retirement felt predictable. There were pensions, cheaper housing, lower costs, a clearer path. You could see the finish line. For Gen X, that finish line started moving. Pensions disappeared, costs climbed, markets changed, rules changed, and every time you thought you were getting closer, the target seemed to move again. That's where the psychology starts. Human beings can handle hard work. What we struggle with is uncertainty. A difficult finish line is one thing. A moving finish line is something else entirely. Because your brain never gets closure. You never arrive. You never fully relax. You never reach the point where you can confidently say, I made it. Instead, the questions keep coming. Can I retire at 65? Maybe 67, maybe 70, maybe not at all. And most men don't say those fears out loud. Gen X men were raised to solve problems, not discuss them. So the conversation happens privately, usually at 2 a.m., looking at numbers, looking at bills, looking at retirement accounts, running the math again, and again, and again. What if I've done everything right and it's still not enough? That's the question many men carry. Not because they're irresponsible, because the rules changed. And carrying that uncertainty for years takes a toll. You see it in stress. You see it in sleep. You see it in the constant feeling that you're never allowed to completely exhale. Even when nothing is wrong. Your brain stays on duty. Always calculating. Always preparing. Always trying to stay one step ahead of a future that feels impossible to predict. A lot of Gen X men have lived in that state for decades. Provider mode, problem-solving mode, responsibility mode, and eventually something happens. You become so accustomed to pressure that it starts feeling normal. You forget what life feels like without it. That's why retirement is more than a financial event. It's a psychological one. It's the promise that someday the pressure eases. Someday the calculations stop. Someday you finally get to enjoy what you spent decades building. When that promise starts feeling uncertain, people don't just worry about money. They start questioning the story they've been telling themselves their entire lives. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The healthiest Gen X men eventually make a quiet shift. They stop asking, when can I finally start living? And start asking, how do I live well right now? That's not giving up. That's adapting. Because if peace only arrives after every number is perfect, most people will never reach it. Life doesn't work that way. The men who handle this stage best don't abandon responsibility. They simply stop postponing their entire lives waiting for certainty. Because certainty never really arrives. The finish line may come exactly when you planned. Or it may not. The market may cooperate. Or it may not. The numbers may work perfectly. Or they may not. But peace doesn't have to wait. And maybe that's the real psychology behind the retirement that never comes. The finish line moved. But life didn't stop. And neither did you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.